Welcome, friends, listeners, to a great roundtable discussion. We're just getting started. This discussion has come about because we were talking about what does it take to be a man? And here we are with all these male individuals. We got Rick, Derek, Jim, Jerry, and Brandon with me today. And yeah, it's like romper room. Everybody's in their little squares, Hollywood squares over here. But yeah, we've been all thinking about this subject this week because it came up about a week ago, and I think it'd be really cool for each of us to share our opinion and thoughts about what does it mean to be a man. So to kick it off, maybe I'll pass it off to Rick. And Rick, what do you think? What came to your mind when we brought this question forward?
Well, I remember when we first brought the topic up, I thought it was gonna be like a pretty simple thought process. Like at first I was like, okay, that's easy to break down. And then I found out through the course of this week that it's a really tough question because I mean it's such a I think there's so many answers and it's just so broad of a question. So I really had to sit down and I was telling you guys before we started recording, I put so much thought into this during the week, asking people, talking to people around me and trying to get what they think. And I mean, and I just kind of I'm just kind of looking at my notes and so bear with me, but I was just wondering like what is it what does it mean to be a good man? And I thought like is that somebody who is calm and they kind of toe the line and they go along to get along and they follow the rules and try to do everything correct. And then the more I thought about it, I'm thinking, no, that is exactly I believe it's opposite of that. I think that a good man is somebody that is strong and they stand on their principles, they stand on truth, and they stand for what's right. And I think that that is definitely uh the mark of a good man. So that's kind of where my thoughts took me is that you know they need that foundation kind of, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, what have you heard over the past couple of months of a certain documentary titled "On the Counterpart of the Sex Spectrum of what is a woman?" And people can't even answer that. Like,
Mhm.
where the hell are we at? And you mentioned principles. Like, all right, well, it's very subjective to people, as far as like, all right, what kind of principles do you stand for and values and this and that? Well, I know the folks in this, panel are familiar with cosmic natural law and all that stuff. And, what we stand on are eternal fucking principles and things that, we need not waver from because we know the difference between right and wrong and all that stuff. And, holding that sacred pillar of masculinity, the do no harm, and the, no, sorry, that's the feminine, but, the take no shit, the protective one, like where do we stand and draw the line on certain things when it comes to people possibly causing harm and coercion and all that stuff that we're kind of born into in this, the conditioning of generational trauma and mind control and all these other things that we're trying to, dissipate and fucking correct and break these fucking cycles of, yes, there is the toxic patriarchal shit, but the matriarchal, it has its own toxicity and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so to strike the fucking balance and really, be the solid figure of a man that has wielded their intellect like the sword that they have, and that left side of the brain is mastered, yet it's integrated the feminine energy of, the yin and all that and being in touch with their intuition and all that stuff. That is a powerful fucking man on this earth. And we're trying to, resurrect that shit. And it goes well beyond chivalry type of aristocratic shit that's, outdated and we could do a lot better. But anyways.
Some great points by Rick and Derek. And it's funny when you bring this topic up, what is a man? What is a good man? When you just look at the word man, you're talking about it in almost three different connotations. You're talking about man, yeah, as a species, man as the individual, then male as the biological male, which at one point in time was more masculine. but sadly in today's day and time is more feminine. So what I want to focus on is just the word man, in and of itself, because when you hear words that, start off with the word man, like manipulate, you got manufacture, things like manual, you got maneuver, you got things like mandate. So when you just have that word man, you're talking about something that is being created. And we all know that we as men, if you're not just talking about biological, males, men, but just the male as the individual and and the man as a species, we all want to create, but we as men, as individual males, we want to create. So when I hear, what is a man, I'm thinking of not just creation in and of itself, but conscious creation. You have that internal, uh, you have that internal balance. Because how one of the main aspects of being a man was, you being in your true, your true masculine. The true masculine is about you not going along with the flow, you not following the crowd, you walking your own journey, you being your own hell individual, you being your own true being. you know you have come to grasp, have certain knowledge, and you have integrated that knowledge within yourself, so therefore you were able to have that form of conscious creation. And I think that's why a lot of males feel as though they aren't capable, or just inadequate, because they aren't creating anything.
Mhm. Well, for me, as I sat with this question during the week, I found myself wanting to dodge it, like not really think about it. And it goes to like what you're saying, Brandon. Like, to be honest, the inadequacy has been there for me. Like, just like I've many times in my life never felt like I'm good enough. I've never felt like I'm man enough, like to live up to that, the Hollywood kind of archetype of a man, or what our society thinks a man should be, or like the macho man, the guy who gets all the girls, or like I've never been like the strongest guy, or maybe not, definitely like not the best provider, like making money for my family, so stuff like that. And so, and I also thought, like, I think of myself as a big kid. Like, I never wanted to grow up and be him. I'm 48, but like, so there's that all that stuff's kind of going through my head about what it means to be a man. And but I but that's we talk about that, how that's like really programming and bullshit, like the archetype and the ego. And like, now that we're getting into natural law and what it means to be a man of integrity, I'm saying, like, that's going to trump everything. Um, and I always think a lot about, because I was raised Catholic, and the whole Jesus thing, and how people go to church on Sunday, and like, who was a better man than Jesus? But yet then they go back to into the world and don't act like him. So as far as that integrity, like, be more like Jesus and not like the Hollywood man. Like, if so many people are Christians and they claim to be like, that's the, Jesus is the greatest, then choose that. I always get stuck on that, but I'll pass that. Pass. That's what I was thinking this week.
You kind of got me thinking about my childhood. My dad was a preacher. He was really into Christianity and religion, and he was also kind of from the Midwest. And he would kind of talk about that thing, like, a man's word is a man's handshake. Where I came from.
Mm.
When I was young, I was taught that when a man says something, he's expected to follow through. And he would say things like that really firmly and sternly, and that really stuck with me. Like, And then he actually compared it to there's a particular verse, and I think it's New Testament, it might be Luke, but anyway, it's right in the beginning of one of those books, and it says like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, you know. And that kind of always got me going, especially since when I don't really necessarily I don't stick with the Christianity religion at all, but there's so many good things I take from what I learned from it. And what that got me thinking is that, like, the more you tell the truth, the more you're honest, like, the more reality there is to your person. Like, if you think about it in a really simple way, if someone tells you, oh, I'll meet you at 5 o'clock, and then you go to the place and that person's not there, it's like they kind of cease to exist in your world. Like, how much more times are you going to keep going, you know? And if that happens over and over, they do cease to exist. They become less real. And so, like, I think part of what, to me, like, the most basic description I could give of what it means to be a man is to be honest. Like Rick said, you know, to be a man of your word, to be someone who does what they say and follows through with what they say. Because, like, in theory, both men and women should have a lot of the same aspects, you know, like a feminine, you want your feminine side and you want your male side, you know. Like, if you look into Michael Tessarian, he talked about this androgynous thing from, you know, the occult histories and some of the mystery traditions, where they talk about, you know, kind of getting the best of both those worlds. And it's almost like Derek mentioned, you know, we have the two pillars in like the Freemasonry drawing board or whatever, where they have the self-defense principle on the one side, and then the non-aggression principle on the other way, which would be the female or the moon side, and then the sun or the male would be the self-defense principle. And I feel like in our modern world, the self-defense principle is totally demolished and destroyed until most people and most men don't even understand it. And when it is expressed, it's in this silly, violent, ridiculous, you know, abusive type way, or authoritarian way, or tyrannical way. And so we don't ever have examples, any of us, from the time we're very young, of what a real man would be. So it's almost like an imaginary thing. So it's kind of hard to talk about in a way, because everything we know of what a man is what people have seen on TV and movies and books and all these stories that are flooded into people's heads since they're little. And that's making them see a picture of what I don't really think a man is at all. And so that makes me go like, well, what isn't a man, you know? And then it starts going into another question. But I'll go ahead and pass it back to Rick.
Great points, guys. You really are. And just thinking about what Jim was saying, that you think like a lot of guys, I think they see the heroes in movies and stuff, and then that's what they think, that's their image of a man, like a big, strong, muscular guy, you know, doesn't show emotion, you know. And I just think that it's just, that's what they want people to think a man is, and it's not. I think that you guys make great points. I think that a great man is somebody that is in touch with both their masculine and feminine side. They've married those two things together. They're not, you know, they and I, it bothers me because in a lot of movies that you see, and that they guys, you know, if they show emotion, if they show any weakness, and God forbid they cry, you know, then they're looked at as a weak man. And I just think that is just that's what they want you to believe. And I just think it's so dangerous because, you know, I don't, it's not true. It's just not true. I mean, if you know, these emotions are there for a reason. And, you know, if a man cries, I think that's just as legit as a man getting angry. I mean, we have these emotions for a reason. And so, but you don't see that talked about very often. At least I don't. It's always these tough guys in movies, and they get the girls, like Jim was saying. It's all this really macho image. And it's just, I think that a good man is somebody that's got both male and female. They're merged, you know, like working together in
Like
concert.
balance.
Balanced. Yeah, great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Balance. Perfect.
I just wanted to mention real quick, I was talking about that verse. It was John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And I think that ties in because your word is what you say, and
Mhm.
that is what you are. Anyway, so sorry to interrupt you, Rick. Go ahead.
No,
Word is
I'm done.
bond, yeah.
That's all I want to say, Chris. And thanks for balance. That's the perfect word.
Mind if I say something? Well, yeah, like
Yeah, jump in, Derek.
in the ancient mystery traditions, whatever they call that, the alchemical wedding, right? Getting that unity consciousness, understanding, yeah, the yin and yang flow of things, and how you emit energy, but you're going to be receiving as well. And yeah, just to emphasize that sacred feminine essence of compassion and care,
Right.
with a capital fucking C on the cosmic level of where humanity needs to be heading more towards, right? And all that stuff. And just to say something real quick about the whole, yeah, like we are inundated, for the past like 5 years with, all this fucking like savior programming, whether it be the vaccines, 5G, 6G, or and all this stuff, but also on the media level, it's like how many superheroes movies are coming out, on like almost like a weekly fucking basis. You know what I mean? And yeah, they had this like feminine usurping of the masculine. They've switched fucking roles almost over the past like 2 years with this whatever kind of agenda going on. If you been paying attention to that any decently, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's like they're getting replaced by this male beta bitch version of what the fuck a real man is. And when and to be honest, like folks like Captain America and Iron Man were decent archetypes of a man. Yes, they had their flaws, they had their ego issues and whatever the fuck and all that shit. But like take it back to like some, like forget about the blings of power or the rings of power. That this, whoever the fuck wrote that shit is whack as fuck. This $1 billion blunder of the Lord of the Rings. But the true types of a real man that I like to just fall back on in case, sometimes I get lost in my navigation or, question my own fucking masculinity, whatever the fuck, you suffer heartbreaks and you kind of, you know what I mean? But like folks like Aragorn, Strider, if you will, and Gandalf, even fucking not Bilbo, but Frodo. These men had fucking courage. They had a lot of value. They had a lot of care and compassion for other people.
Mhm.
They were leaders in their own rights, and they didn't fucking follow orders or no fucking, you know what I mean? And they were against fucking evil, and they were not going to waver against that as well. And their bravery shone through all that. Like just if you guys read the books, you understand on a deeper level, and if you understand the allegories, it's even deeper. You know what I mean? So just like taking these things into consideration when you're growing up and all that stuff. Yeah, I wrote those books when I was adolescent. You don't know much when you're at that age, still developing the cognizance and all that stuff. But yeah, for me, it just like set a decent compass for like, wow, like we can treat people in this way. And like, how many languages do these people speak? I'm bilingual myself, and I love to speak French, where I was living there for a third of my life and married and all that stuff. And like having that awakened heart and just wanting to do right every fucking breath and every step that I took for the greater good and for the win-win for, all. And feeling like I had that, good positive energy where I can wield the magic and be a creator, a provider and all that stuff, and still, provide that space for, that co-creation of my, sacred counterpart and all that stuff, and let her beauty shine and all that stuff. It ain't that fucking hard, yo. This is just like real life shit, like get with the program, guy. But anyways, yeah. What's good, Jerry?
Yeah, I love what you were saying about just everything basically. But yeah, I want to ask a question. What is, I mean, you gave an example of, which was, I was thinking like, what's an example of a good man? And you just gave an example, like a couple examples. So that's fascinating. If I had to think an example of a good man, uh, Mark Passio, I mean, that's just like right off the top of my head. I think we're all good men here because this group is based on principles. So that's what Crypt was talking about. And I believe people are dumbed down that they don't know what a good man is. And that's why this can be a little complex. But I think the solution is to talk about it. So I'll pass it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, you know what? what occurs to me is that like we're trying to redefine that word in so many ways because the programming, and that's what, you know, that's what occurs to me most when I was thinking about it this week leading up to it. Like a lot of the storylines going in my head are from stuff that really affected me as a kid, from the cartoons and the comic books. And I was remembering this daydream I used to have in school where like guys would come in the classroom with machine guns and I would be the hero. Like I would jump up and grab them by the neck and pull their gun down. And I would like daydream about this stuff. And so like my idea as a kid from like playing with my toys and stuff was always like there was these bad guys, right? The bad guys are going to come, but I'm a good guy, you know, and I'm going to save everybody and I'm going to beat the shit out of the bad guys. And so it's like this really simplistic and violence type based silly idea, but it's so ingrained in me that even though I know better, in certain ways I see it express itself over the years. And like what a woman's supposed to be like, what she's supposed to look like. I've had to like restructure my own thinking over and over and over the years to deprogram all this bullshit in my head. So, you know, I think for me, it's like that's the biggest thing that comes up when I think about this is like the programming that's out there that people are stuck in. And that's what's defining a man right now. And like the three main shows I think of that come to mind are like The Simpsons, Married with Children,
Right. Yep.
and what was the other one I was thinking? Oh, Friends. Friends really sticks out for me too because it's like an example of these males
Never saw
that are like, good for you.
it. Good job.
They have no guts. They never they're not honest. They lie constantly, and like they're untrustworthy.
They watch a
They'll
lot of porn too.
betray each other. They act very feminine. You know, it's a show where they're destroying what a man should be. And so like, you know, Married with Children, you know, you got this father just doesn't give a crap. He just sits on the couch drinking beer. You know, it's like in The Simpsons, you know, like they're always making the male, the father of the family, like an idiot. An
Yep.
idiot who you can't trust him. He's always going to be at the bar and he's never going to tell the truth. You know, and even the ones that they display, like I think it was Home Improvement, that guy with the funny laugh, right? He seems like kind of like a good dad and like he does some good things, but he's always lying. He's constantly telling lies. That's the whole laugh track, is lies that he's telling and getting himself into stupider and stupider situations because he can't tell the damn truth. And so it's like what is being displayed in the public eye as a man is the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying it's about being a man of your word, about being honest, about doing what you say you're going to do and sticking to that, and that being like the priority of being a man. And that is the opposite of what they're teaching you with these television shows and almost all the shitty versions of a man that are programming men and female alike.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, this
Um,
kind of Chris, I'm glad that you brought that point up because this is what I talked about in the Freedom on the Natural Law 2 conference. In my discussion when it came to keeping your word and how your word was one of the first contracts. Because if you and I came to do business, you as a man, me, you know, as a man, it wasn't, you know, how we signed things for on paper. It was your word, it was your bond. So we would shake hands and we would honor, you know, held the word because that was the contract. Because speech, our voice, is a form of action. It is one of the masculine components of our being, and that masculine component is that penetrating energy. It is that energy. It is that energy that's going to go out, you know, hell, that's going to be active. It is that forceful energy. So when we use our speech, you know, that is us, you know, we are using that in right action to say no, to speak out, to use our voice to say, hey, we are not going to go along with that. And when keeping your word, that is what helps you build your integrity. Because when you do not keep your word, that's a piece of you that you are sacrificing, that you are giving to someone else. You are just giving that, you know, hell away. Because speech is so valuable from not just a physical side, but from a spiritual side, because that is what, you know, the divine, the all, hell, the isness source has given us. communication, because all that is a form of creation. Because without the speech, without being able to express ourselves in the forms of, words, how could we really communicate? How much creation will we really, get done? So we as, males, as men, we should be maintaining our word as much as possible, because that's how we help build a more integrated self, a more integrated being. And if you continue to lie and be deceitful and to dishonor, your word, that's you dishonoring a part of yourself, and you dishonoring the Holy Spirit, or, hell, the all, hell, whatever you want to call it. You can call it God, but if people want to, connect to source, or, raise their vibration, raise their energy, raise their frequency, start honoring your damn word. Like, that's one of the best things you do. If you say you're gonna do something, start doing it. Start doing it.
Word. And
Go ahead, Jim.
yeah, it goes back to the trivium just real quick. I mean, like, building up your grammar, being able to articulate properly, that words sound power, man. Yeah. Had Brandon on for a recent discussion. We were talking about that. It was good stuff. I'm gonna pass it on. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. I love that shit, yo.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Brandon. Like that's what I'm getting. It's to be like the most authentic man is to be the man of your word. But I think what holds most men back is fear, right? That's so to be able to break through that fear, like that's being a good man. I've spent a lot of times in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I learned a lot about men over the years. About I saw a lot of tough guys who were really just scared men. Everyone's really acting. They're not being who they really want to be, but they're trying to like live up to that typical man or whatever, whatever they went through in their life. But you get to know the real man in those rooms. And that had a big effect on me. That changed my life. I got to see like, what people are going through, but and then at the same time, it's just so that the fear obviously is winning. We know that that's part of the programming. And so, we're talking about what can we do to break through that fear. I don't have all the answers. I'm still scared. Like there's things that I know I want to do, and I'm not, because the fear does get to me. But yeah, I could totally see that. Sorry, just to honoring your word is really that's a huge part of being a good man. Yeah.
The other aspect you're bringing in there, Jim, about the fear, I mean, I think that is really important. One thing on my mind is, I've been taking this class and I'm learning a little bit about some self-defense stuff. I'm a beginner, but the guy who's teaching me, he's really good at this stuff. He's been doing it for a long time. And he often makes the point, like with self-defense, for instance, like he goes, when you see people like gearing up to fight, like we've all seen this at school or something, or, people like, come on, come on, come on, just like pushing each other around. And then where I grew up, in the neighborhood I grew up, all the boys were always like, I could kick your butt. I could kick your ass. No, I'll kick your ass. Like there's always this kind of tough guy out, where like, if you think about it, the true martial artist, someone that actually did have those skills, the last thing they would want to do is advertise that, they would want it to keep it secret and actually be kind of quiet and calm, and they would do everything possible to not have to hurt someone, because they know, like, someone like the guy who was teaching me, like he knows well enough that if somebody actually made a move towards him, he probably would hurt them. They'd end up with a broken arm if they don't do the right thing, and so, like, part of being a male is being reserved, and it's when you don't say something, when you want to say something, or when you're really angry and you do have the strength to overpower a female, for instance, but you don't, because about principles, and you're in control of yourself and your own you're owning your own self. You're in your own authority, right? And so I think a lot of when I think about the aspects of a male, I also think of like the leader traditionally, like in a tribe or um, people living together. You're going to have some sort kind of like leaders that handle different things, and the leader of um, generally defense of the tribe would be the men. They would be expected to go out and defend, to protect the children and the women and the future of the tribe, right? It's just natural. There's nothing wrong with that. Not to say there's not some tough ass women that have protected men. I'm sure, that has happened too. But traditionally, that role that we want to fill is that tough guy, right? But so often in our actual life, being the tough guy is what you don't do and what you don't say, and your ability to control that inner psychopath, which you need to have and be able to access it when shit does get crazy. You need to be able to get on it. But the balance is the rest of the time you need to be really calm in times of stress and display that type of behavior so that other people and younger people and children can feel calm because they see that you got things under control and you're not losing your shit even though things are getting a little hectic. So to me that's a lot of what being a man or being even a leader is about, is that inner authority and that inner calmness of just knowing where you stand on things.
Chris, I think the word you was trying to find was be disciplined.
Discipline, yeah.
That's a good
Yes,
word.
yes.
Yeah.
Be disciplined. And remember, discipline can involve or have compassion. How discipline doesn't necessarily like have to be like a tough love kind of masculine form. It can also have a very how caring, how loving, how compassionate form too. So yeah, how discipline is always a good thing. How that we should have. How knowing when to how restrain ourselves. How knowing that yes, we do have the capacity to take things to the next level. Yes, we do have the capacity to take things further than they need to go. But sometimes that's not always the right help approach when doing things, especially when you are trying to teach. You have to be willing to take those baby steps and be disciplined and be willing to help forgive not just other people but also forgive yourself, because a lot of people lack that self-discipline. How they don't know how to tell themselves no. They don't know how to bring things up to their conscious understanding. So they're just still in that lower level unbalanced form of duality, polar extremes. So how they lack the discipline and they're just going off that negative programming. Sounds like Derek has something to say.
I kind of always do, but yeah, man, the disciple of discipline, man, I love it. Yeah. Yeah, you've got a lot to say about that in previous posts, videos rather, and all that. Yeah, man. You know what's up. And Chris, I wanted to mention something like that, and I also wanted to ask a question. If people want to run with that, they're more than welcome to. But yeah, Chris, as far as like yeah, like the non-action part of like the action thing, and just like being able to know your own strength. That is really key for any kind of man, like understanding like the power that they have and what they're wielding, being able to have that and tap into that psychopath, like as you mentioned, for that, fucking like extra hardcore fucking self-defense mode, whatever the fuck berserker type of shit they need to fucking wield and bust out at any kind of, shit could go down, whatever, right? But yeah, man, little kids growing up, who's the tough guy and this and that. Everyone's, sizing who's got the biggest dick on the table, whatever the fuck, and you get
You
this.
said something about my mama.
Yeah.
You remember those days?
But,
I
people
remember
older
that.
than me these days, they're, putting their dicks on the table, like, what kind of job do you have? How many motorcycles do you have and all this shit, whatever the fuck, like, like all material stuff aside, bring it back to what you're saying, Chris, as far as, like, I feel like, yeah, and Brandon, tying it in together, like having that discipline and the willpower and wielding your constitution to realizing the power that you hold within yourself, knowing your own strength and the limitations of that, and respecting other people's boundaries and all that stuff as well.
Yeah.
And I know the title of this is "What is a Man?" But as far as defining that, it can be complicated, as we all understand and know. And we're like, well, but you know, we could take it to the apophatic inquiry and talk about what isn't a man, which we already kind of covered with, you know, some of the things that you displayed with, you know, the whole media, Simpson, you know, all these, you know, the deadbeat dad folks and all this shit, you know, not really, you know, all that stuff. So if folks want to touch on
Ooh,
that, you know, you're more than welcome to, or just whatever. That's all
I've
I'm gonna
got
say.
one because yeah, you brought up the apathetic.
Or
Uh, a, a real man is one who will not let the flame of truth die out. Yeah, because you know, hell, again, it goes back to creation, and I just talked about how using, you know, how your voice. If you are not using your voice to stand up, to speak out, to be that individual, you know, to be that true self, then what exactly are you doing, you know, with that voice? You know, so yeah, a real man is one who will not let the flame of truth die out because you know it's like we all see what's you know happening. We see tyranny, you know, how we see censorship, we see how the propaganda is getting worse and worse, and too many people, too many grown grown men, supposedly males, you know, he'll know what's going on and they're still not doing anything, you know. And you don't have to take this giant leap. You can start off, you know, crawling, you know, start off doing, you know, how your baby steps. So if you are not willing to, you know, seek the truth, you know, harmonize with the truth and speak the truth, then you are willing to let that, you know, how that flame of truth die out, which in reality is never going to die out because the truth is always going to be there. But hell, what I'm saying is, you know, hell, with this totalitarian, you know, hell slave system just, you know, censoring people, what are you doing if you claim to be a real man, you know? Because a real man is not going to just sit back and just watch things, you know, just observe things like, oh yeah, you know, I've seen everyone else, you know, hell around me being you know, being enslaved. So yep, nope, it's not gonna happen to me. So like what are you doing in the form of action? But the problem is in order to achieve right action, you have to have right knowledge. So I'm gonna pass it on to Rick.
I'm just,
get that trivium.
yeah, you guys are just bringing up so much good things. My head's just going a mile. It's going in every direction right now because you guys are bringing up so many great points that I'm going to be thinking about, I'm sure, all night. That I'm going to be really thinking about this. But I love what you said, Brandon. I keeping your word, man. I think that's a great place to start because I think of how many people don't do that. I know I've been guilty of that, saying I would do something and then not following through. And when you kind of think of it that way, like that's a great place to start. Simple, right? Just do what you say you're going to do. Keep your word. If you're going to meet somebody, be there. If you're going to help somebody, you say you're going to be there to help them, be there. Do that. And I think that's really powerful. And it's a simple thing that people can do. Just keep your word. And I don't know. I'm all over the place, guys. You guys are bringing up so many great points, and I just, I mean, when I was talking to people in person, and I was asking them like, "What is your definition of a man?" I got the very a lot of people were just kind of like somebody that provides for the family, somebody that takes care of their, you know, like provides a roof over their family's head, takes care of the family, maybe their friends, but it was very, very selfish. Not many people brought up anything that we're talking about. There was no talk of principles, there was no talk about truth or any of these things. It was very shocking when I started to talk to some people in person just to get a definition of what they thought a man was. So, uh, I don't know, man. My head's all over, guys. I really apologize. I just think, and I also think that a lot of men are lost. I think they don't even really know what their role is anymore because you got guys that are scared. You know, do they protect the family? Do they stand up for women, or do they let, because then women get upset because I'm trying to focus my thoughts, but it's all over the place, guys. So please bear with me. But you know, with women like thinking that they can um do anything a man can do and they don't need help and stuff. And then some men are kind of like, because I think back to the old tribe days, you know, a man's job was very specific, kind of. He protected the family, he protected the tribe, the village, maybe provided the food for it, and then that was kind of his job. And now without, you don't really have that aspect now with modern society. So I think a lot of men are lost and just really don't know their role and kind of trying to figure that out. And then you got all this mind control going on with TV and movies and what they're seeing, music, another one, kind of. And I just think that they're lost. I think, and there's that group that we were talking about, Brandon. You brought it up last week. I can't remember but men that are kind of doing their own thing, and they're kind of like,
Oh, yeah. Was it
I
your
never remember.
MGTOW?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your MGTOW.
Yeah, and so I mean that's just showing you that guys are kind of lost. And so I mean, do they open a woman's car door? Do they open the door for them? Do they? I mean, so I hope you guys know what I'm trying to kind of coming from here, because I'm kind of all
I
over
can
it.
only
But
laugh. Sorry, yeah. I can only laugh. But yeah, hell, I get what you're saying. And hell, one of the main reasons why I brought up conscious creation for my first point is because that's going to lead to my next point, is because we, as men, do like to create things, and once we do create those things, we want to protect those things. But
Mhm.
sadly, most males' form of creation is in a form of stagnation. So their real form of creation is penis creation. So how they just get stuck. How in booty worship is what
Yep.
how I call it, and that's really what they want to protect. So a lot of males are still falling for how that. I see Derek over there laughing. Hell, too many males are still falling hell, for that form, because that is a form of hell unconscious creation, because then you get more stuck in the whole emotional hell attachment to how you just getting your Yahweh on, how your big explosion, your
Yep.
big bang. And then that's really what how most males just want to stay for, just the whole pleasurism. And how that right there in of itself falls into other forms of form of degrading consciousness. But that's where a lot of males is they are just thinking it's about body counts, and
That's
how
true.
can I get the most girls, for how can I disrespect females, for how can I be more of a toxicity, not just to the feminine, but to how nature and to truth itself, by um hell, abusing your phallics, and that's what so many males are doing, is they are abusing their phallics.
Yeah, and not even having like conscious sex. And like women will say, like, like, why is this guy just like masturbating inside me? Pretty much, you
Mhm.
know. That ain't fucking love making. That isn't a, true connection of on a heart-based level of intimacy or anything like that. And yeah, like
Agreed. Yep.
we've all been subjected to all types of porn growing up and all that stuff and the internet craze. And geez, what was it before? Like on the TV at late night on the commercials, you'd see like Girls Gone Wild on some
Yep.
whatever the
Yeah,
fuck.
I
girls
remember
Like,
gone
that.
god
wild.
damn
Yeah,
that shit. And like it
Yeah.
stems
yeah.
from like the booty worship shit, man. Like, yeah, like I saw the video
Playboy
you did with Nathan
magazines.
Crabtree. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that I mean that stuff has an impact too. The way even from the beginning, like whether women should wear clothes or not, should that even be regulated in the first place? Like more like you said, traditional people living in, where they were born. And when we find people, they like a lot of times the women just let it all hang out, right? Because it's totally natural. So the kids aren't like tripping out on it and worrying about it and stressing about it and be like, thinking about it like a lot of us were growing up, because it was all hidden and you're never
Mhm.
supposed to see any body parts. And then when you do, it's like, ooh, how exciting, like it sets you up for this whole problematic system. And a lot of men are left lonely and don't know how to meet women. They don't have the tools or the knowledge how to do so. And they wind up getting into abusive type situations. Or that's a lot of times why women get abused, and the percentage of women that get abused by men is like ridiculously high, which
Yeah.
goes to show that there isn't really that respect or knowledge of what a man should be on a mass scale. Otherwise, the percentages of women getting abused would not be so high, because the man's first highest ideal would be to protect the women and children,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Not rape them. So Yeah, I got one more big point I was thinking of making, but did you want to jump in at all, Jerry or Jim?
Yeah, I got something. Like, I think a man is one that does the right thing when, it's very easy to do the wrong thing. Even when nobody's watching. I mean, I'm still watching. So, yeah. What you got, Chris?
Just the last big thing I was thinking is what really makes a man, like I was starting to talk about that situation we've all seen in school when guys puff up, like, come on, you want some? Like a lot of that is fear based. And a lot of the situations we've seen of why like police officers overdo it and wind up killing somebody when they shouldn't, it's because they're in a state of fear. A
Right.
lot of this comes
Mhm.
from this state of fear that, oh, I'm going to look bad. So I got to beat the crap out of this buddy. So everybody knows, this guy looked at my girl. Are you looking at my girl? Are you looking at me? It's like, come on. It's like, it's all this fear based bullshit. And it has to do with this false ego that a man in this false identification is this version of yourself that never gets taken down a notch, that never no one can say anything bad about, and then if they do, you're going to get them. And that's totally false, and that's not what being a man is. Being a man is being able to admit you're wrong. It's being able to put your ego aside and maybe even look stupid. Maybe even like my self-defense instructor said, if I took a little punch to the face and the whole situation calmed down and all that happened was I had a little blood, or he's like, fine, I'd rather it ended that way. I wouldn't want to hurt the person. If that would be best, like, so if you were a true man, you might even do that in a certain situation. You might take one little lick or whatever and calm the whole situation down, and be the bigger man. What's called the bigger man is being able to look at the big picture and being like, what really matters here is not my freaking ego and that people look at me as being the tough guy or the leader, but that I did the right thing for all concerned in this situation, even if there is some level of sacrifice on my part. That's how you set a good example.
Great point.
So yeah, I mean, we've been hitting this pretty good. We're getting close to an hour. Let's kind of like go through and closing thoughts and takeaways. I don't know. Brandon popped out. I hope his internet's all right.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can jump back in.
Yeah, hopefully.
So there's a lot of stuff that men are just, we're running on a lot of programs, whether it be generational or whatever, trauma based, whatever. And to like, go into that and do the shadow work and heal the wounded masculine, heal that inner child, that, and especially like Jim, you're like almost like 50 years old. Like you are from a different generation than me. I'm like almost 40 years old. Where like, yeah, kids growing up, it was taboo to, like, sorry, kids, like boys growing up, like it was it was kind of dangerous to show your emotions even to your peers and your family members and your father and this and that, and these drunk alcoholic fathers, laughing about the Simpsons, but ain't no fucking laughing matter when you're at the short end of the stick, getting whipped on by your fucking drunk ass dad, whatever the fuck. I mean, like, I'm not applying this to any individual, I'm just saying, like, in general, this shit has gone on, and it just carries on for the cycles. And that's why I mentioned before, like, these cycles need to be fucking shattered the fuck over. And it's great that, like, you did go and do AA and all that stuff. I've been there before, yeah, and I've had to try to master my high and, like, realize, like, yo, like, being under the influence of certain substances, like, amplifies certain energies and strengths that, you're gonna regret, the day after type of shit, whether it be getting into fights or, talking shit about your girl, or, talking to a girl that was, another guy's woman. And, like you said, Chris, before, like, these, the shadow ego takes control of so many fucking situations where, like it's like this alpha monkey male type of archetype where, like, no, I got to defend my woman because, like they got their own fucking insecurities that a lot of people don't recognize and understand. They feel like they need to overprotect, the woman that they're coveting or whatever, loving. And a lot of these assholes don't even fucking love their woman properly. If you really break it down and like see it, and like, yeah, I've seen this time and time again for the decades, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just like that toxic masculinity that has not been reconciled with, not has been addressed within the individual themselves. And yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before we got on the recording, like where the fuck is our guidance? You know, aside from our parents, you know, which, you know, if you don't have conscious parents growing up, like Corey Anderlet, for example, yeah, you know, like you gotta have you know, the learning curve is pretty fucking steep sometimes, and you ain't getting it from the indoctrination camps. So where can young men, young adolescents really come into manhood on a true cosmic fucking level that is, you know, natural law integrated, fucking hermetically sealed shit, you know? I want to be a part of, you know, making that shit happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all I got to say.
Yeah, we need to start that school. It's like the school initiation. We don't have initiation for young people, and that needs to be developed and created. And I hope people are inspired to start working on that. I'm sure people are here and there, but it's something I'm very interested in too. Thanks, Derek, for that inspiration. Yeah, we were just, Brandon, you popped out for a minute there. We're just kind of like going around giving concluding thoughts, because we're kind of getting towards the end of our hour here. So anybody
Yeah.
else got any takeaways or takeaways?
Well, I'll go since I just like Zoom just crapped out on me. How you unplug one thing and then the whole thing just freezes. Fuck technology. But yeah, we've got to build focus and clarity, because those are two how masculine traits, so we, as how men should be able to focus and help be able to pinpoint on what our goals are and have the mental clarity, to use whatever form of discernment to get us to understand. And those things are important, because we got to have knowledge, because we're not going to get to being real men, or hell, being fucking anything without knowledge. Hell, we have to get back to the principles, hell, the basic core principles. So if you are familiar with her natural law and the hermetic principles, how the mind is going to be the generator of all things. So if we really want to create true change, then we have to get to the causal factors, which is in our minds and how we think. And these same tools are being used held against us. So if we had the knowledge and we had the mental clarity and the focus to be able to, to put our focus on that and shift our time, shift everything to this important knowledge, then maybe we can start to see some, some real change on an individual, level, then hopefully, societal collective level.
Wonderful words. Wonderful words.
Good
Beautiful.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you, Derek, about teaching the young kids. I definitely find it have to be homeschooled kids. The kids who are already in the program, the schooling system, it's going to be tougher to get them. But like the homeschool movement is growing, right?
For
So
sure.
push more homeschooling too. And to carry on what you're saying, Chris, about the self-defense, and it's just like a true man causes no harm, right? Like the principles of natural law. Like, what would it mean to be a truly a good man? To cause no harm.
Yep.
That's I think that's how I'll resolve it. I'll end it there.
And I would just add to that is like, I love kung fu movies. And one thing they always show in kung fu movies was like there was like these guilds of martial artists, and sometimes they would even compete one house against another. But like, to me, that idea that's even a thing that's kind of lacking in our culture, that there's a built-in system of educating yourself to prepare yourself for dealing with things when they don't go well. And what else can help things go well but having a backup plan, and being a good male would be like, absolutely avoid danger, avoid problems, try to make sure you don't put yourself in those situations. But when those situations come, you're ready to do something about it, and you know what to do.
Yep.
And that's kind of like what I see as the role too of the male, especially in the modern age, to step into that role. And that's a struggle, because we were trained from the time we were born to be very passive, and to be very law abiding. Like Rick was saying, that's what people were telling him when he asked him, what does it mean to be a man? People will say, oh, a good man follows the rules, which is actually the opposite. A good man doesn't give a fuck about rules.
Exactly.
A good man gives a fuck about principles, and the rules could be gone, in a moment when the principle overrides the rule. And that's what a true man is. And a lot of times it means being in a difficult situation or saying something that you don't really want to say that needs to be said, so it's not an easy path, that's for sure. So yeah, I've been talking too much. How about you, Jerry? You got any closing thoughts?
Let's end it on a good note. Thank you, guys. I learned so much.
Yeah, I liked hearing everybody's point of view.
Yeah. Can I just build on what you said a little bit, Chris?
Absolutely.
I just and I do. I want to thank everybody here this evening because you guys are amazing people, and you're gonna have me thinking all night. Trust me on this. Probably for the rest of the week, I'm gonna be thinking about what was said tonight. And I just think of what has to happen is I think shadow work is so important, and I'm gonna say that forever because it changed my life. And I think that men have to. Everybody does, but to do the shadow work on yourself and start asking yourself the hard questions, because deep down, if you're being brutally honest with yourself, whether you're a good man or you're a piece of shit. I mean, you do. I would hope so. And if you're just being honest and with yourself and doing that work on yourself and start educating yourself and seeking out this knowledge, about natural law and the things that we're talking about. And it's as simple as like what Brandon was saying, starts and I said too, I was from what Brandon said, is that just start simple, keep your word. Just start something simple like that. If you're going to say you're going to do something, do it. And I just really want to say that the shadow work is important. I think that that's the foundation that a lot of people are lacking, and they're scared to death to truly do it. And it's a game changer when you're brutally honest with yourself and you do it and ask yourself the tough questions. And I'll just end with saying, like, if you're a good person or not, or if you are lying to yourself and people. So I'll just end with that.
Yeah, a real man admits when he's wrong.
Exactly.
That's the other side of what we were saying, like keeping to your word and having good words to say. And the other side of it is recognizing when what you said was wrong and being able to admit it. That takes a real man. The bigger man is the one who can admit that he's not perfect and then he made a mistake and be responsible. So good, man. I think this all advice will help us all be a better man. And I'm going to be certainly working on that myself. And I encourage everyone else to do the same. And I hope these words help whoever is listening on their journey and their path as well. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks much.
Thank you, guys.
So much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the other wonderful chat.
Yeah, honor amongst men, yo.
Hello, this is Chris Jantzen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast.
It was a crazy year, 2020. I think everybody kind of was losing their mind one way or another. But if you're listening to this, you made it through.
And they're making mistakes, and people are starting to awake.
There is a science of human freedom.
It's also a spiritual journey.
A person under hypnosis will start to see that there's something wrong. Something is wrong.
It's great that you know what you've come to know, but until there's an outlet for that information and you start creating and putting your creations out into the world to teach other people so that they can become as knowledgeable as you.
Life. What is encouraging life is good. That which takes away from life and growth and creativity is not good.